Welcome to the module on disaster management and preparedness. By the end of this module, you will be able to explain disaster, explain why it is important to be prepared for disasters, list the different types of disasters, outline the Disaster Management Act 2005 and explain the establishments, outline the national policy on disaster management, identify the importance of disaster preparedness, identify the evacuation and rescue techniques and explain the role of volunteers during disasters. Let us begin by understanding what is disaster. According to the United Nations, a disaster is a serious disruption of community or society's functioning with widespread impacts beyond local resources. Disaster management is how we deal with the human, material, economic or environmental impacts of said disaster. It is the process of how we prepare for, respond to and learn from the effects of disasters. Components of disaster management include preparedness, that is, getting ready for potential disasters through planning, training, and resource allocation, response or immediate actions taken during a disaster to save lives and reduce damage, recovery, that is, efforts to rebuild and restore the affected community post-disaster, mitigation, actions and strategies put in place to reduce or minimize the impact of a potential risk or threat. Disasters can be natural or man-made, impacting vulnerable populations. The goal of disaster management is to lessen the impact of disasters. Now that we have learnt about what is disaster, let us now understand why disaster preparedness is important. Disasters can cause significant damage to unprepared communities. Infrequent occurrence of disasters leads to a lack of preparedness due to a lack of perceived urgency. Despite this, ongoing vulnerability reduction is crucial, necessitating preparedness for potential disaster impacts. Community-based planning enables the management of post-disaster hazards, enhancing individuals' and groups' capacity to mitigate effects and manage resources until help arrives. Comprehensive coordination involving private sector, schools, volunteers, and organizations is vital for effective community response, utilizing trained individuals as immediate post-disaster resources. After learning about why disaster preparedness is important, let us now move on to the disaster management cycle. The disaster management cycle encompasses comprehensive planning and response to disasters, encompassing pre-disaster actions like prevention, mitigation, and preparedness and post-disaster efforts like response, search and rescue, relief, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. Disaster management may refer to the management of both the risks and consequences of disasters. Click each tab to know more. Disaster risk assessment is a participatory process of evaluating the hazards that endanger communities, their vulnerabilities, and capabilities. Through risk assessment, possibility of occurrence, and the frequency, scope and duration of various hazards can be determined. The consequence assessment considers the natural, geographic, economic, social, political, and psychological factors that may add to the vulnerability to a hazard. The aim of the assessment is to figure out the risks caused by the disaster and make it the basis for a disaster risk reduction plan. After understanding what is disaster management cycle, let us now learn about the types of disasters. Broadly, disasters can be categorized into 5 subgroups. These are water and climate-related disasters, geological disasters, chemical, industrial, and nuclear disasters, accidental disasters, and biological disasters. Click each category to know more. floods, landslides, storms, heat waves, wildfires, extreme colds, droughts, and waterborne diseases are some of the disasters caused due to water or climatic changes or catastrophes. A geological disaster occurs when natural geological processes impact our activities, either through loss of life or injury or through economic loss. Some examples of geological disasters are landslides and mudflows, earthquakes, dam bursts, mine fires, tsunamis, etc. Industrial disasters are disasters caused due to chemical, mechanical, civil, electrical, or any process failure. On the other hand, nuclear disasters are referred to the accidents that take place in any nuclear facility or in the nuclear reactor in the facility, resulting in the release of large-scale radioactive gases into the environment. Disasters caused by accidents such as equipment failures, forest fires, oil spill, building collapses, and air, road, and rail accidents and similar. Biological disasters are natural scenarios involving disease, disability, or death on a large scale among humans, animals, and plants due to microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, or toxins. Examples are bubonic plague in Mumbai in the year 1896, the COVID-19 pandemic in 2019, etc. After learning about the types of disasters, let us now have a look at the vulnerability profile of India. 58.6% of the landmass is prone to earthquakes of moderate to high intensity. 68% of the cultivable area is vulnerable to drought, over 40 million hectares. 12% of land is prone to floods and river erosion. Of the 7,516 kilometers long coastline, close to 5,700 kilometers is prone to cyclones and tsunamis. Let us now look at the history of some of the major disasters that occurred in India. Many major disasters have occurred in India, including Bhopal gas tragedy in 1984, Latur earthquake in 1993, landslide in Pithoragarh in 1998, super cyclone in Odisha in 1999, earthquake in Bhuj district in 2001, and the tsunami in 2005. During these disasters, our approach was relief-centric only. There was an organized response. No institutional mechanism was available for disaster management. The setup was under the Ministry of Agriculture. National Center for Disaster Management was formed under Ministry of Agriculture, which was later converted to NIDM. After these major disasters, and especially the tsunami in 2005, Indian government brought the disaster management set up under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Let us now learn about the Disaster Management Act in detail. The Disaster Management Act was enacted on 23 December 2005. The Act provides for establishment of National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Authority, Disaster Response Fund and Disaster Mitigation Fund at national, state and district level, and National Institute of Disaster Management and National Disaster Response Force. The Act imposes penalties for obstruction, false claims, misappropriation, etc. There shall be no discrimination on the grounds of sex, caste, community, descent or religion in providing compensation and relief. National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, with Prime Minister as ex officio chairperson, has a maximum of 9 members including vice chairperson nominated by the Prime Minister. The authority may constitute an advisory committee consisting of experts in the field of disaster management. The authority shall be assisted in times of any disaster by a National Executive Committee of Secretaries to be constituted by including 14 secretaries or heads of different ministries or departments with Chief of Integrated Defense Staff Committee as ex officio member of the committee. The authority shall lay down the policies, plans and guidelines for disaster management. The National Executive Committee shall prepare a national disaster management plan in consultation with the state governments. The national plan includes measures for prevention and mitigation of disasters, integration of mitigation measures, and preparedness and capacity building. NDMA shall recommend guidelines for the minimum standards of relief provided to persons affected by disaster. The Disaster Management Act established an authoritative body for disaster management at the state level, known as State Disaster Management Authority or SDMA. The members of SDMA include the Chief Minister of the state as its ex officio chairman, a person designated by the Chief Minister as the Vice Chairman of the State Disaster Management Authority. SDMA Advisory Committee co-ops experts, as and when necessary. Section 25 of the DAME Act provides for the constitution of DDMA for every district of a state. The district magistrate or district collector or deputy commissioner heads the authority as the chairperson. An elected representative of the local authority as co-chairperson except in the tribal areas where the chief executive member of the district council of autonomous district is designated as co-chairperson. Other members of this authority include the CEO of the district authority, the superintendent of police, the chief medical officer of the district, and two other district-level officers designated by the state government. The district authority is responsible for planning, coordination and implementation of disaster management and to take such measures for disaster management as provided in the guidelines. The district authority also has the power to examine the construction in any area in the district to enforce the safety standards and to arrange for relief measures and respond to the disaster at the district level. In the event of a disaster of a severe nature, National Crisis Management Committee headed by the Cabinet Secretary gives policy directions and guidelines to the management group where national or international efforts are required. National Executive Committee is headed by the Home Secretary, which reviews the situation in interministry or department meetings to coordinate various emergency responses for the affected states. Union Cabinet may set up a Cabinet Committee or Task Force or Group of Ministers (GOM) for effective coordination of relief measures in the wake of calamities of severe nature. A state-level crisis management committee under the chairmanship of Chief Secretary is responsible for emergency management. The committee comprises of concerned functionaries in various state departments and representatives of central organizations located in the state. State Relief Commissioner or Secretary Disaster Management is the nodal officer for coordinating the activities for relief operations in the event of natural disasters. Community-based disaster risk reduction seeks ways to help communities effectively use local resources and capacities to better prepare for disasters and to adopt measures to reduce their vulnerability. It places the responsibility of being prepared for calamities and other emergencies on the community as a whole, ensuring that organizations, households and individuals can work together in making their community more resilient in the face of disaster. Community-based preparedness and early warning systems help in saving lives, protecting property, and reducing economic losses. Local community will always be the first responder to any disaster. Know the natural or man-made hazards that could affect your community and seek advice on how to best prepare for or mitigate these hazards. Talk to your household about potential hazards or emergencies, how they should respond to them, and what they would need to do if they had to evacuate. Plan how your household would stay in contact with each other if separated. Identify two meeting places. One should be near your home in case of a fire, and the other should be away from home, at a neighbor's or family member's place, in case you cannot return home. Choose a friend or relative who lives outside of your area for family members to call and say they are all right. Draw a floor plan of your home and mark escape routes from each room. Emergency telephone numbers must be kept at a predesignated place and teach children how and when to use them. Make sure everyone in the household knows how to turn off gas, water and electricity at the main switches. Consult with your local utility companies if you have any questions. Also, include neighbors, the elderly and disabled, etc., with special needs into your plan. Keep the family together while you look for housing and assistance. You may want to leave your children with relatives or friends, but preferably keep the family together as much as possible and make children a part of what you are doing to get the family back on its feet. Children get anxious, and they'll worry that their parents or guardians won't return. As an adult, we should walk in a manner that places us between the traffic and the child. As much as possible, we should never expose our child to the dangers of moving traffic and never place children in the front seat of vehicles, even outside emergency and disaster situations. Encourage children to talk, let children talk about the disaster and ask questions as much as they want. Encourage children to describe what they're feeling. Listen to what they say. If possible, include the entire family in the discussion. It will relieve a lot of stress the disaster may have generated in the children. If ordered to evacuate, you must do so immediately. Take note of those emergency shelters that have been declared open. Listen to a battery-powered radio and follow given instructions. If the danger is a chemical release and you are instructed to evacuate, do so immediately with your family. Keep water, food, clothing, emergency supplies, and important documents at a place near to the exit. Secure your home. Close and lock all doors and windows. Unplug appliances, turn off the main water valve and electricity, let others know where you are going. Leave early enough to avoid being trapped by severe weather, follow recommended evacuation routes. Do not take shortcuts, they may be blocked. Be alert for washed-out roads. Do not drive into flooded areas. Stay away from fallen power lines, take your disaster supplies kit with you, take important papers with you, including your driver's license, special medical information, insurance policies, property documents and certificates, etc. While the volunteers are always ready to help, it is important to ensure that they are themselves safe during rescue operations. Hence, it is advised to carry a disaster preparedness kit. Let's take a look at what it comprises. Disaster preparedness kit comprises a personal flotation device, which is a life jacket made of polyurethane foam, a torch or emergency light that is solar-enabled, safety gloves of canvas or leather, pocket knife, first aid kit, matchbox, whistle, water bottle, badge of first volunteer, rucksack and mosquito net, water-resistant clothing or raincoat, gumboots, safety goggles, safety helmet for water rafting. Let's look at two cases and identify the standard rescue techniques. Read the case and choose from the given options. In gas leak situation, put out all flames immediately. Open all windows and doors to air out properly. Turn off all gas valves. Do not use open fire, do not use electrical appliances and do not use electric doorbell and do not make phone call. Read the case and choose from the given options. Firstly, every vehicle transporting HASCHM must always be labeled properly. If there is a HASCHM leakage while transportation, move away in the direction perpendicular to the direction of wind, hide in the nearest shelter and close all doors and windows, switch off air conditioner and cover your face with wet cloth. Next, let us look at the role of volunteers in disaster management and preparedness. Volunteers can help in many ways during disasters. Volunteers can help in evacuation of victims. Volunteers can provide first aid to victims. Volunteers can help in rescuing animals. Volunteers can help in managing relief camps and in distribution of relief material. Volunteers may act as messengers of government's advisory and disseminate warnings. Volunteers can be utilized by the state in all type of general services. With this we have come to the end of this module. Let us summarize the key points discussed in this module. Disaster is a widespread disruption with significant impacts beyond local resources. Disaster management involves preparing for, responding to, and learning from disasters. Disaster management components include preparedness, response, and recovery. Disasters can be natural or man-made and affect vulnerable populations. The goal of disaster management is to reduce disaster impacts. Types of disasters include water and climate-related, geological, chemical, industrial, nuclear, accidental, and biological. India's vulnerability profile includes earthquakes, droughts, floods, river erosion, and cyclones. The Disaster Management Act 2005 established NDMA, SDMA, DDMA, NIDM, NDRF, and funds for disaster response and mitigation. Disaster preparedness is vital due to India's vulnerability to various disasters. The Disaster Management Act ensures proper disaster management and non-discrimination in relief. Community-based disaster risk reduction involves local resources and capacities. It promotes resilience through community cooperation. Preparedness includes gathering supplies, wearing protective clothing, securing homes, and informing others of your location. Now, it is time to check your understanding of the topic. This is an evaluation exercise. All questions are equally weighted. You need to score at least 60% to pass the test. Read the questions carefully and select the appropriate options. Congratulations!